The pounding shook the peephole like a heartbeat, and the hallway smelled like wet concrete and cheap cologne. It was 6:04 a.m. My apartment key was still warm in the dish by the door. My veteran pin lay beside it like a small, honest witness. I slid the deadbolt halfway, then stopped because the metal on the other side scraped with a promise. "Open up," Daniel said. "My brother never knocked," he announced. "We're done playing. This is our place." My mother's voice braided through his, sugar over metal. "Ashley, don't make this ugly. You used our money. It's family property." My father coughed the way cowards do when they want credit for air. "Let's be reasonable." A crowbar clanged softly against the frame. An easy, rhythmic tap, like the start of a song I had no intention of dancing to. I breathed in, coffee gone cold on my counter, floor cleaner dried sweet in the corners, and tucked the folder under my arm. The one with a label I'd printed in block letters, Control. Inside, deed, closing disclosures, VA loan statements, bank letters, paper that didn't blink when someone raised their voice. I checked the chain and spoke through the door, voice level. "It's 6 a.m., Daniel." "Landlords wake up early," he said, pleased with himself. "You're not my landlord," I said. "You're loud." Evelyn, always performing for the hall, raised the pitch. "We let you stay with us after deployment. We fed you. The least you can do is stop pretending this is yours." My hand found the top page in the folder without looking. The deed was cool under my palm, heavy like a fair verdict. I pictured it on a judge's bench, not a dinner table. "I paid the down payment with a VA loan in 10 years I can't give back," I said. "I signed a loan. I own it." Daniel scraped the crowbar again, answer without content. "You used our address on the paperwork," and he said, "That makes it ours." "That makes it mail," I said. The hallway light hummed. The old building's heat clicked in the riser like a throat clearing. I slid the chain from its cradle and opened the door 6 inches. Enough to frame the scene. Daniel in his sleep-collapsed hoodie, hair mashed flat on one side, grinning like a man who'd found a shortcut. Evelyn with lipstick already perfect, eyes calculating. Robert hugging his jacket as if cold were a moral stance. The crowbar's rubber grip bore teeth marks from some other impatience. My mother's perfume blurred the air, powder and something sickly sweet. "You're confused," she said, not blinking. "Of course it's ours. We fronted you when you were overseas." She gave the word quotes that canceled its respect. "You reimbursed yourself with my deployment pay," I said, and slid a bank statement to the crack. Her gaze flicked down and away too quickly for reading. She was never good with documents unless she could arrange them like placemats. Daniel leaned forward, chin smug. "We're moving in. We'll take the master. You can have the office." He wedged the crowbar between door and frame as if the wood took orders. The crowbar's cold breath slipped through the gap. I could feel its temperature on my bare forearm. I kept my voice in the range Captain Moore had always called briefing calm. "Take that out," I said. "Or what?" Daniel smiled. "You'll throw your little papers at me?" "Or I'll call the police and show them the deed you didn't read," I said. "And the power of attorney you abused while I was deployed." Evelyn flinched, a small crack at the corner of her mouth, then smoothed it flat. "We helped you," she said. "We kept your bills paid." "You opened credit in my name," I said. "I closed it." Robert finally found a sentence. "Ashley, come on, we're family." "Family ties end where respect ends," I said. I let the words settle like dust, then added, quieter, truer. "I built this. I protect it." Daniel pushed the crowbar harder. The door groaned but held. "You don't get to talk to Mom like that," he said. "She raised you." "She raised my tolerance for paperwork," I said, and pressed the folder flat against the wood so the edges bit my skin. Pain clarifies. So do pages. A neighbor's door cracked open down the hall, chain latched, 2 eyes over a robe, hair wild, phone already up. People pretend they hate scenes until one might save them later. I nodded once. The phone stayed. I set the folder on the little table by the door, flipped it open, and palmed the deed, the VA closing letter, the bank's clean black type that said, "Paid to Ashley Parker." I slid each page into the opening like a dealer laying down a straight flush. Evelyn didn't take them. Daniel couldn't read from that far back. Robert's eyes wobbled, then fixed on the crowbar like it might explain what paper refused to. You can threaten me with a tool, I said, voice steady, or you can meet the law. Choose. The hallway felt colder when I said it. Maybe because the choice shifted from me to them. Maybe because every system I'd learned to trust woke up behind me. VA, bank, county records. A veteran legal line written on a sticky note under my salt shaker. The veteran pin on the dish caught the light and flashed once, tidy as a salute. Daniel tried one more angle. 8 words like all his worst ideas. You're nothing without us. Don't be ungrateful. I smiled, the kind that leaves room for nothing to grow. I'm everything without you. I'm documented. He blinked. Evelyn switched tactics. We'll stage this nicely, she offered, palms out, voice meant for witnesses. You sign a paper, we take a room, we'll help with groceries. I don't sign under threat, I said. I don't sign lies. The crowbar slipped out with a reluctant tick. Daniel's jaw worked, new plan forming. Evelyn already reached for narrative. She's unstable, she whispered toward the neighbor's phone. We're worried about her. I let my silence do its job. Then I closed the door to the chain, set the deadbolt, and engaged the latch that sits invisible unless you built the place yourself and picked it, because it doesn't care about drama, just angles. Through the door, I spoke one sentence, measured and final. If you believe this is yours, bring a deed with your name. If you bring a crowbar again, you'll meet a badge with mine. The metal quieted. Footsteps shuffled. A sway of perfume drifted away. The elevator groaned as it took them down, cables whining like a tired throat. My apartment exhaled with me. I slid the folder back into its spot in the cabinet, the one labeled with my own handwriting, Control. My fingers found the apartment key in the dish. The metal was cool, the serrations a familiar map. I slid it into my palm and felt the notch that always catches at the deadbolt unless you lift your wrist a degree. Every lock has its rhythm. I had learned mine. On the counter, the coffee had gone cold enough to taste like pennies. I poured it out, rinsed the cup, and set water to boil. The kettle's whistle a promise later. The morning light pushed against the blinds in clean stripes. Dust hung honest in the beam. My phone lit with 3 messages. Family thread blooming like mold. I didn't open it. I tapped the Veterans Legal Center contact instead and held the phone to my ear. The veteran pin a small weight in my other hand. Veterans Legal, the voice said, awake and useful. I need to document a fraud attempt in a home invasion, I said. I have the deed. I have the bank letters. I have a crowbar mark on my frame. Copy, he said. Start a folder. Bring everything. We'll build the rest. I smiled at the word that's never once lied to me. I pressed 2 fingers to the doorframe where the metal had scraped and felt the groove. Proof leaves marks. So does peace. They had come at dawn with a crowbar and a script. I met them with paper and a spine. I wasn't waiting for quiet anymore. I was building it. I spent a decade learning to live out of a ruck and fold my life into exact rectangles. Sand and JP8 taught me discipline faster than any family dinner ever did. On deployment, mornings smelled like diesel and dust. Nights tasted like metal canteens and weather reports. I learned to love checklists because they never mocked me. They just asked for sequence and met me with function. Coming home was the part no one warns you about, how quiet can feel like an ambush. I stayed in my parents' spare room the first month back and slept with my keys in my fist. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old resentment. Evelyn called it care when she opened my mail without asking. Robert called it help when he organized my bank statements into a pile he could understand. Daniel called it family when he borrowed cash and returned it as stories. You're the responsible one, Mom liked to say, as if that were something we'd agreed on. Translation. I was a resource, not a person. They made a ritual of it. When the car needed brakes, I paid. When a late fee appeared, I handled it. When Daniel's business almost worked, I wrote the gap into solvency. The gratitude smelled like cake frosting and evaporated by morning. If I pushed back, the volume went up and the script changed. You know we'd do it for you. Why are you so cold? After year 10, I decided responsible could be a verb I used for myself. I went to the VA seminar with a notebook and a pencil sharp enough to mark a new life. The counselor walked us through the VA loan like it was a map. Credit, income, entitlement. I listened, wrote, asked, verified. The paper was boring in that beautiful, generous way. Numbers that added instead of accused. Sergeant Ethan Cole, old friend, older paperwork wizard, leaned over my shoulder and tapped a line. "This is your spine," he said, meaning the pre-approval. "Build around it." I did. I kept a binder labeled control because I like my metaphors literal. Deed, closing disclosures. Emails printed and hole punched. A copy of my DD 214 that still smelled like copier heat. The first letter from the bank arrived stiff and formal. Loan closed, paid to Ashley Parker. I set it under a magnet on the fridge and let it sit there like a flag I didn't need anyone to salute. My veteran pin shared the magnet for a week, then moved to the dish by the door where it could catch the light on mornings that needed truth. Before I could close, I had to move in with my parents again. Just long enough to stack cash and wait on a unit that matched my math. That month was a slideshow of small humiliations. Mom, accidentally, set my folder under a stack of coupons. Dad, helpfully, signed for a package and opened the envelope that held my appraisal. Daniel laughed at the number and said, "Nice. We'll upgrade the TV." We, like a sticky note. One afternoon, I came home to find my power of attorney on the dining table. Copies, not originals, but still loud. Evelyn had a pen poised like a conductor. "Just in case we need to move money while you're doing army things," she said, sugar in the voice, steel in the eyes. "I'm home," I said, and slid the document back into my folder. "And that's not your hand." "You don't trust us?" she asked, the way people do when they've given you reason not to. "I trust paper more," I said. Daniel started practicing for the social media campaign months before he launched it. "You used our address for all this," he told his online friends. "We helped." Comments came back thick and lazy. "Family property." "Don't be selfish." He showed them to me like I should be grateful for the chorus. I blocked him and made a second email address that never intersected with his narratives. The day I got the keys, the leasing office smelled like toner and plastic plants. The manager slid the envelope across the desk. The metal teeth inside clicked like a tiny choir. "Congratulations, Ms. Parker," she said, and meant it. I walked into my empty apartment with no one behind me and listened to the quiet sit right. The place was small enough to heat evenly, big enough to hold a life. Sun came through the blinds in careful stripes and turned dust into a parade. I pressed the deed flat on the counter and wrote my name once, just to see how it looked next to a thing I owned. The veteran pin went in the dish by the door. The folder slid into the cabinet I'd bought from a thrift store and sanded myself. Label printer, spitting control in block letters that matched my patience. I learned the key's rhythm in the deadbolt. Lift, turn, click, and how the lock met me halfway if I met it first. When I told my family I'd closed, they staged a dinner. Candles, cloth napkins, and the smell of pot roast used as perfume. "We're proud of you," Evelyn said, which is how she begins a negotiation. Robert lifted his glass and hummed. Daniel waited until dessert to show his hand. "So we'll take the office. It makes sense. It's family property." I set my fork down and slid a photocopy of the deed onto the table, candlelight pooling on the watermark. "It's not." "Don't be like this," Mom said. "We helped you. Remember the address?" "Mail," I said. "Not entitlement." Daniel grinned. "You used our money." I looked him in the face for the full count of 4. "You used mine. I have the transfers." I pulled the bank printout from my folder. His eyes didn't settle on the numbers. They never do. The difference between us was simple. They collected stories, I collected receipts. When my mother accidentally moved a withdrawal into her account to cover a bill, I moved it back and left a paper trail. When Daniel tried to enroll my account in an auto-invest scheme during my TDY, using an old power of attorney I'd revoked, I sent the bank my revocation and copied the fraud unit. The letter they sent back was clean and heavy. Fraud attempt, logged. Access revoked. The stationery had weight, so did my relief. They framed everything as care. They called me ungrateful when I didn't hand over the things I built. They celebrated loudly and texted me quietly to ask for rent money. I learned to let texts sit. I learned to photograph checks before I deposited them and to circle the memo line when it mattered. I learned that boundaries love paper like gardens love fences. Sergeant Ethan Cole met me at the coffee shop by the bank when I started the final loan packet. The place smelled like espresso and sugar, a clean loud. He tapped the closing disclosures with a finger that had ink on it. "You sign here and here," he said. "Then you own your morning." "My morning?" I asked. "The one where you don't answer the door unless you want to," he said. "The one where your key means your peace." I took the pen. The grain of the table felt rough under my forearm. I signed with a name that was used to orders and asked for none. The wind outside moved a flag. Inside, the printer spit truth. I slid the stack into my folder and wrote the date on the tab. By the time 6:04 a.m. arrived with a crowbar and a chorus, I had already built the room that could hold it. The apartment key was a small, serrated no. The veteran pin was a reminder I'd earned a home that didn't require apology. The folder labeled "Control" weighed honest in my hand, corners biting my palm in a way that said, "Hold steady." They had raised me to be a reservoir. I had turned myself into a lock. The deed had my name. The bank letters had my math. The crowbar had their fear. And the morning, it had finally become mine. Morning light hadn't found the blinds yet. The hallway hummed its old building hymn. Steam in the riser, elevator cables sighing down the shaft. I set my palm on the deadbolt, felt the familiar notch in the keyway like a heartbeat I controlled, and opened to the chain. The cold breath from the corridor smelled like mop water and someone's cheap cologne. Daniel planted his hand on the frame, hoodie half-zipped, eyes bright with certainty he hadn't earned. "You used our money," he said. "It's family property." Evelyn lifted the crowbar so the rubber grip kissed the wood. Tap, tap. A metronome for bad ideas. Lipstick perfect, smile arranged for witnesses. "We're moving in," she added. "Don't make this ugly." Robert hovered behind them, jacket hugged to his chest like courage on layaway. "Let's be reasonable," he offered to the carpet. I tucked the control folder under my arm and slid the chain 2 links looser. Enough to show paper, not weakness. "Here's reasonable," I said. "Deed, closing letter, bank statements." Daniel snorted. "Mail doesn't mean ownership." "Mail means mail," I said, and laid the first page into the gap. The paper's edge brushed his knuckles. "Deed, owner, Ashley Parker." My name held the line like a rank that didn't need salutes. Evelyn angled the crowbar's flat end toward the latch. "You owe us," she said. "We fed you after deployment." "You reimbursed yourselves from my pay," I said, and slid the bank printout behind the deed, numbers black and patient. Line by line. He didn't look. People who fear paper always prefer volume. "We'll take the master," Daniel said. "You get the office." "You brought a crowbar to my door," I said. "Meet a document." Mini-turn came from down the hall. A door chain rattled, a neighbor's eye appeared, and a phone rose like a periscope. Evelyn clocked the lens, pivoted on cue. "She's unstable," she whispered to the air. "We're worried." I lifted the veteran pin from the dish and set it on the table where the light could find it. "I'm documented," I said, "and awake." Daniel wedged the bar between wood and metal, eager for physics to respect him. The frame groaned. My palm found the door's sweet spot, angle, pressure, the small lift that neutralized leverage. 10 years of armoring doors beats 1 morning of theater. "Take it out," I said. "Or what?" He smiled. "Or I call the police and show them this," I said, sliding the VA closing letter through. "Paid to Ashley Parker." Under it, a second sheet, power of attorney revoked, received by bank, dated and initialed. And this. Evelyn's smile faltered, hairline crack repaired fast. "We helped you," she tried again. "Family helps family." "Family respects ownership," I said. "Respect ends. Access ends." The elevator dinged at the far end, a soft punctuation. The super stepped out, arms full of salt bags, eyebrows lifting when he saw the crowbar. "Everything all right?" he asked the hallway. "Family matter," Evelyn called, bright and brittle. "Fraud attempt," I said, calm. "Documented." Daniel swung his stare from the super to me, 8 words primed like always. "You'll be nothing without us." "I'm everything with proof," I said. He shoved the bar again. The door didn't move. I kept my breath on a 4 count and let silence carry weight. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. The building's version of a nod. I set the folder on the console, flipped to the tab where I'd filed what they'd hoped I'd lose. Screenshots of transfers labeled reimbursement. My revocation letter to the bank. The fraud unit's reply on heavy stock. Access revoked. The paper smelled faintly of toner and victory. "Read," I said, "or leave." Evelyn's voice went soft enough to bruise. "We'll go public," she warned. "Tell people you stole from us." "Tell them," I said. "I'll show them." The neighbor's phone angled for a better shot. The super shifted the salt to his other hip. Robert finally tried a line. "Ashley, let's talk at dinner." "Dinner is where you stage traps," and I said. "This is where I protect my home." Daniel's grip slipped. The crowbar skated off the strike plate with a squeal that sounded like a retreat. I reset the chain just enough to underline the point and tapped the crowbar mark with 2 fingers. My own little timestamp. "You brought a tool," I said. "I brought records." He glanced at the deed again, something finally landing. "You're serious." "Always," I said. "And this morning, lawful." Mini turn 2. My phone buzzed on the console. Sergeant Ethan Cole. "You up?" I snapped a photo, deed, crowbar mark, VA letter, and sent it with 4 words, "Legal tomorrow." Full file. He replied in one, "Copy." Evelyn dropped the performance and went cold. "You'll regret this," she said. "I regret sleep lost," I said. "Not boundaries kept." They backed away in stages, like tide pulling off a stubborn shore. The elevator groaned. The cables complained. Their reflection stuttered in the chrome door before it swallowed them whole. The hallway sighed back to its morning. The neighbor's phone lowered. The chain on her door slid home. I closed mine, set the deadbolt, and engaged the hidden latch only I knew about. The small brass tab you have to lift just right. The control folder went to its shelf. The veteran pin returned to the dish. The apartment key lay warm from my hand, serrations a private map. I pressed my thumb to the crowbar scratch in the frame, shallow, undeniable. I made coffee I intended to drink hot, dialed the Veterans Legal Center, and opened my notebook to a fresh page. Title: Attempted Fraud, Home Invasion, 0604. Beneath it, bullet points, deed shown, crowbar, witness phone, super present, bank letter, POA revocation. I wrote clean, because clean is how you win. When the kettle hissed and the cup steamed, the room smelled like beans and calm. The blinds bled light into the stripes I'd chosen for my mornings. I rested my palm on the deed one more time, let its cool hold teach my pulse a better rhythm, and smiled without ceremony. They brought a crowbar. I brought proof. That ended the war. Today's version of it, anyway. The rest would be filings and locks and a voice that saved itself for judges, not kitchens. My piece had paperwork, and I'd finally learned how to live inside it. By noon, the crowbar groove on my doorframe had turned from anger to evidence. The apartment smelled like hot coffee and printer toner. My control folder lay open on the table like a map. I photographed the scratch, the latch, and the deed beside a ruler. Angles that make sense to people who respect angles. The veteran pin caught a wedge of sun and flashed once, steady as breath. Sergeant Ethan Cole showed up with a legal pad and the kind of patience good NCOs keep in reserve. He ran 2 fingers along the groove. "They escalated," he said. "They performed," I said. He sipped coffee, grimaced, then smiled. "Strong, documented." He tapped the folder's tab. "We stack, we don't shout." We spent the afternoon building a spine. Bank letters, screenshots, my revocation of the power of attorney with the bank's received stamp in the corner. Ink slightly smudged. He circled it once. "There's your handrail." He left me a checklist. Boxes small, promises larger. When he stood to go, he pressed the veteran pin into my palm like a coin. "Wear your proof," he said. Mini turn. Mom went public by dinner. A post bloomed on her feed, sugar over venom. "We're heartbroken. Ashley used family funds. We're just trying to share space. Pray for us." Daniel reposted with a selfie featuring a bruised ego. "Sister stole our apartment. We'll forgive." A cousin added a comment that tried to sound biblical and landed petty. The notifications stacked like bad debt. I didn't answer. I printed. Each post got a timestamp and a red pen note. False claim, implied co-ownership, defamation risk. The printer hummed. The room filled with that warm, dusty ozone. I slid the stack under the control tab and wrote, "Social" on a fresh divider. Backflash cut in like an old slide projector. The month I came home, they'd called it care when they changed my mailing address without asking. I remembered the smell of lemon cleaner and the clink of a spoon in a pot no one ate from, and how Daniel said, "We'll manage your bills while you're gone," like a promise in a trap. I remembered Evelyn laying my revoked power of attorney next to coupons and coupons winning. A chorus line of small cuts masquerading as kindness. I walked the perimeter of my apartment to steady the present. Door, lock, chain, hidden latch. My key turned without complaint. The serrations sang their little metal song. I put the veteran pin on the shelf by the door where it could glare at lies. Mini turn 2. The bank flagged an attempt at auto invest, same play as last year, new timing. An email arrived at 1906. Subject line plain as a warning light. External access request? Blocked. The body carried proof, IP address, timestamp, attempt denied under revoked POA. I called the fraud unit on speaker. Hold music thin and honest. A man with a careful voice logged the incident and read my revocation back to me like scripture. "Permanent," he said. "We're adding a verbal passphrase." I chose one that tasted like steel and relief. Ethan texted, "Keep the screenshot." "Already printed," I replied. "Copy," he sent because some words never lie. By morning, an unfamiliar number pinged. Attorney Michael Grant, Veterans Legal Center. Ethan briefed me. "Bring your file." His office smelled like clean carpet and old books. The AC vent sighed. He wore the kind of suit that respects paper more than cameras. "You don't need my outrage," he said. "You need a record." He ran through the sequence with courtroom calm. Police report for attempted unlawful entry, bank affidavit for POA abuse, certified copies of deed and closing docs, temporary protective order request. He underlined chain of custody on a yellow pad. "They'll go for narrative," he said. "We'll go for numbers." I laid the crowbar photos on his desk. He didn't flinch. "Good," he said. "Every groove helps." He slid a stack of forms across and pointed to the lines that mattered. Pens scratched, mine then his, and the carbon paper beneath whispered yes. Mini turn 3, Daniel's smear picked up local traction. A community page posted a photo of my building, wrong unit, right door color, with a caption that read, "Veteran steals from family, won't share." The comments did what comments do. Armchair judgments, soft threats. A stranger tagged my employer and demanded action. I forwarded the thread to Michael. He emailed a letter heavy with consequence. Demand for retraction. Defamatory statements concerning Ms. Parker. He CC'd himself, the page admin, and, this made me breathe better, the address of the county courthouse. Evelyn left voicemails that crumbled under their own performance. "You're sick." Followed by, "You're ours." Then quiet and mean, "You owe us." I forwarded each to a folder labeled Noise and logged the dates. Attorney Grant nodded when I showed him the list. "Patterns win cases," he said. "Keep going." Backflash again, brief and sharp. The dinner after I closed, candles sweating, the room smelling like pot roast and manipulation. Evelyn's hand on the napkin, fingers gentle and strategic. "We'll take the office, right?" she'd said, and Daniel's grin had looked like a debt collector's. That night I left early, put the deed under my pillow, and slept like a guard. Waking felt like permission. I started sleeping like that again. Documents near, locks checked twice, key under my skin. The apartment learned my pace. The blinds breathed morning and measured stripes. I kept the veteran pin on the shelf like a lighthouse. Minnie turned 4. The super knocked with a clipboard and peppermint on his breath. Saw the posts, he said, eyes kind. We're upgrading your strike plate. Building policy after this. The drill word, metal shavings smelled like hot pennies. He held up the old plate. This one was for people who believe in doors, he said. The new one's for people who don't. A certified letter from the bank arrived. Heavy envelope, blue seal. Fraud attempt confirmed. Permanent restrictions applied. I ran my finger under the raised seal until the paper warmed. Proof that doesn't ask for applause belongs in a frame, but I slid it into control because frames are for museums, and this was for court. By late afternoon, Michael filed the petition for a temporary protection order. The courthouse lobby smelled like old varnish and coffee from a machine that never made anything good. He handed me a stamped copy. The ink was still damp. We'll serve them, he said. They'll perform. We'll sit. Daniel posted another flail. She's cruel. We gave everything. Someone I didn't know wrote, let the judge decide. For the first time, the comments didn't feel like a pile. They felt like a lever. Systems were louder than they looked. I went back to the apartment, pushed the door with my hip, and listened for the latch to catch. The sound landed satisfying, final. I set the folder on the table, put the deed on top, and smoothed it once. The veteran pin winked as the sun slid. I brewed tea that smelled like citrus and quiet. I wrote the next steps on an index card and taped it to the inside of the cabinet. Police report filed. Bank letter received. Attorney engaged. TPO pending. The card lay flat. The tape held. At dusk, Evelyn texted an invitation with a photo of lit candles and folded napkins like a trap set in soft light. Dinner. Let's talk, Daniel added. Bring the folder. Robert, please. Intervention, Ethan texted, seeing the post before I did. Staged, I answered. I'll bring proof. Don't go alone, he said. Attorney on speed dial, I replied. I put on a plain shirt that didn't rattle, slid the control folder under my arm, and tucked the veteran pin into my pocket like a small weight that knew my name. I checked the lock twice, then stepped into a hallway that smelled like clean concrete and early evening. Candles or not, a dinner table is just another kind of public bench. They would bring guilt in theater. I would bring records, and the quiet that wins when everyone else is shouting. They staged the intervention like a catalog. Candles sweating vanilla, napkins folded like swans, pot roast fogging the air. The dining room light hummed. The table's lacquer felt sticky under my forearms. My control folder sat by my plate, squared to the placemat lines. The veteran pin pressed a small circle in my pocket. Evelyn opened with theater. We love you, she said, palms up. We just need the apartment's equity as collateral. Daniel's business had a setback. Daniel leaned in, cologne loud. It's smart. Family helps family. Robert nodded at the roast. Eat first. I slid the folder closer. No equity, I said. My voice stayed brief and calm. No collateral. Evelyn's smile thinned. Don't be selfish. Daniel tapped the table. 8 words rehearsed. Sign, or we move in today. I laid the first document under the candlelight. Deed, I said. Owner, Ashley Parker. The watermark caught a soft glow. Sole title. He glanced, didn't read. We fronted you. I placed the bank ledger on top. Transfers offset line by line. Reimbursed from my deployment pay. Tap. Your credits, my debits. Dates. Evelyn sniffed. Old bookkeeping. Next, the VA closing letter. Paid to Ashley Parker. Paper cool under my palm. Loan closed. Funds to me. Robert tried soft voice. Just as collateral, honey. I slid the bank's certified letter across. Raised seal, blue ink. Fraud attempt confirmed. Permanent restrictions applied. Your auto-invest attempt, I said. Blocked under revoked power of attorney. Daniel flinched. We never. I put down the revocation, received stamp smudged at the corner. You did. Then the bank email, printed. External access, denied. Timestamp circled. Last night. Evelyn exhaled through her nose, slow. You're overreacting. I clicked my phone to speaker. Attorney Michael Grant's voice arrived clean, paper-tempered. Ms. Parker, I'm on the line. Petitions filed. Any request to pledge her residence constitutes attempted fraud given current filings. Daniel hissed. You called a lawyer to dinner? I brought proof, I said. Evelyn tried one more channel. Guilt. We housed you after deployment. I slid the reimbursement schedule back into the beam. You invoiced me, I said. I paid. Robert's fork clinked the plate. We're family. Respect is the requirement, I said. Respect ended. Access ended. Mini turn. I raised my phone. Sergeant Ethan Cole's text popped in. At curb. Knock if needed. I didn't need it. I laid the final piece, the bank's affidavit for POA abuse, down like a quiet gavel. Affiant, Ashley Parker. Finding, abuse attempt. Remedy, permanent lockout. Daniel's jaw worked. You'll ruin us. You did, I said. I just documented it. Evelyn reached for the papers with two careful fingers. We can talk. I gathered the stack and squared the corners. I don't negotiate theft. I slid a single page forward, a polite grenade. Temporary protection order, filed. The stamp still smelled faintly of ink. Service is pending. The room's sound drained down to the light's hum and the soft tick of roast juices cooling. Mom's candle sputtered once and died, a little surrender. Robert stared at his hands. Daniel reached for volume. I handed him timestamps. He shoved his chair back, the legs squealed on tile. You're nothing without us. I stood, the chair scraping once, measured. I'm whole with proof. He lunged for the folder. I stepped left, smooth, 10 years of muscle memory in a dining room with too many candles. No, I said, and the word landed like a latch catching. Michael's voice stayed level on the table. Any attempt to seize documents becomes part of the record. I advise you to stop. Evelyn sagged into her chair. You'd send your mother to court? I'd send fraud to court, I said. Whoever holds it. Mini turn. Knuckles on the door. 2 firm raps. Robert looked up like a rescued man. I didn't move. Ethan didn't enter. He didn't need to. This was my table. I gathered the documents in order. Deed, ledger, VA letter, revocation, bank letters, TPO, each page sliding under the next with a sound like a file closing. The veteran pin in my pocket felt heavier, honest weight. Evelyn tried one last angle, voice sugar slow. Ashley, be kind. Kindness has boundaries, I said. Mine are signed. I tucked the folder under my arm, checked my pocket for the key, that small, serrated no, and stepped away from the pot roast and the script. At the doorway I turned once because clear is a kind of mercy. You brought candles, I said. You brought a crowbar. I lifted the folder an inch. I brought proof. That ended the war. Outside, the night smelled like cool asphalt and cut grass. Ethan leaned against the car, hands open. Boring? He asked. Boring, I said. We walked to my apartment in silence that behaved. The lock met my key without argument. The door closed with the correct weight. Inside, I laid the control folder on the table, slid the deed to the top, and pressed my palm to it until my pulse matched the paper. They had asked for equity and permission. I answered with record and law. The candles were pretty. The files were final. The Veterans Legal Center smelled like copier heat and carpet cleaner. The lobby clock clicked like a metronome that respected deadlines. I set my control folder on attorney Michael Grant's desk. The grain was smooth under my forearms. He stacked my pages into a clean column. Deed, ledger, VA letter, revocation, bank affidavits, TPO, and slid a fresh form across, watermark faint as a whisper. Permanent protection order, he said. We attach the fraud findings and the attempted unlawful entry. Quiet wins. Pens scratched. Carbon paper exhaled. He stamped the packet, ink a dark, disciplined smell, and handed me a certified copy. Filed looked good and bold. Next, he said. Title lock. The bank branch hummed with low fluorescence and the faint bitter of old coffee. The manager greeted us by name, firm handshake, no performance, and keyed in the request. The keyboard clacked a neat rhythm. Her screen reflected green lines in her glasses. Accounts flagged, she said. External access blocked. New passphrase active. She slid a letter across. Permanent restrictions applied. Effective immediately. The seal impressed the page. My thumb felt the raised circle and relaxed like a muscle finally listened to. Mini turn. Daniel's smear picked up speed online. Filtered photos, captions dressed up as concern. We're praying for our unstable veteran. Evelyn reposted with a candle emoji and the word heartbroken 3 times. A neighbor messaged me screenshots with timestamps and a note that smelled like laundry soap and decency. You don't owe them. Documenting for you. I printed each thread and wrote, defamation. Exhibit in red along the margin. Paper cooled the heat. Paper. Back at my table, the apartment smelled like lemon oil and printer toner. I laid out the day's letters and took photographs. The crowbar groove, the strike plate the super had upgraded, screws long as a promise, the deed framed by the new order. Sergeant Cole sat on the arm of the couch, legal pad balanced on a knee, boots leaving clean rectangles on the rug. Stacks taller, he said. Louder, I said. He grinned. Not loud, clear. He left a laminated card by the door, post-deployment financial checklist, boxes tiny, comfort large. Put this where your keys clink. The clerk at the courthouse called at 14:22, voice calm, paper crisp. Ms. Parker, the judge signed. Permanent order granted. I put her on speaker. The room went still to hear it. Michael's eyebrows lifted half a centimeter, which is how lawyers celebrate. He emailed the PDF before the line even finished clicking. Order. Respondents to maintain 200-yard distance, no contact, direct or indirect, violations prosecutable. A quiet decree, heavy as good steel. Mini turn. A community page tried one more post. She weaponized paperwork against family. Attorney Grant's cease and desist went out at 14:37. The admin folded at 14:51. Post deleted, apology pinned. We shared unverified claims. We regret the harm. Screenshots filed. The comment I kept was a single stand from a user with a ship's wheel for an avatar. No emojis. Just a word that understood what rooms should do. The title office sat behind bulletproof glass that smelled faintly of Windex. The clerk took my ID, stamped a form, and slid me a receipt with a perforated edge that tore with a satisfying rip. Title lock activated. She smiled like a person who likes seeing systems stand up straight. Congratulations, she said. You're hard to steal from. By design, I said, and tucked the slip behind the deed like a spine. At home, I taped an index card inside the cabinet where I keep the kettle, today's log. Permanent order granted, doc DUR. Title lock confirmed. Bank restrictions permanent. Defamation letter issued. Apology posted. Next, rest. I boiled water. Steam lifted the smell of citrus tea into the room. The veteran pin caught the afternoon sun, a soft white flare on metal. I sat at the table and wrote thank you emails with subject lines that matched my pulse. Filed. Granted. Secured. Sergeant Cole texted a single word back, copy, and I didn't need anything more. Evelyn called twice and left a message that sounded like a play closing mid-scene. You can't cut us out, she said to the void. The recording ended with the clink of a glass and the soft click of someone hanging up on their own script. I saved it to noise and moved on. Mini turn. The super knocked. Peppermint on his breath again, clipboard in hand. Got this for you, he said, passing a printout of the building's new policy. No entry, no exceptions, without tenant consent. He pointed at the crowbar groove. That's history now, he said. In both ways. By evening, the sun laid gold bars across the floor. Dust hung honest in the beams. I slid the permanent order into a clear sleeve and filed it in control front and center. The folder's weight felt different, less like defense, more like foundation. I placed my apartment key on top for a beat, serrations against plastic, and listened to the quiet behave. My phone buzzed once more with a local invite. Veterans Mentorship, Financial Independence Panel, would you speak? I said yes because peace scales when you share the blueprints. The kettle clicked cool, the room smelled like calm. I checked the locks, deadbolt chain, hidden latch, palmed the veteran pin, and touched the crowbar scar one last time. It had become a notch my finger could find without looking. Not a threat, but a reference. Proof leaves marks, so does safety. I turned off the light. The blinds breathed. The apartment held. I slept with the folder in the cabinet and the key in the dish, the order signed, the title locked, my name where it belonged. They had launched a campaign. I had built a record. The court fell on my side without needing my anger to push it. That was the victory. Not noise, not spectacle. Paper doing what I asked it to, and a door that stayed mine when the morning came back. The auditorium smelled like fresh copy paper and brewed coffee left to keep warm. A banner read Veterans Mentorship, Financial Independence, edges taped straight. My control folder rested on the lectern. The veteran pin caught the stage light and threw a small, steady star onto wood. The room murmured, low, expectant, not hunting for drama. I kept it boring on purpose. I'm Ashley, I said. Army vet, homeowner, former resource, current person. A few smiles. I lifted the deed, plastic sleeve cool in my hand. They brought a crowbar, I brought proof. That ended the war. The projector hummed while I clicked through slides that were more checklist than story. Deed, revoked POA, bank letter, title lock, court order. The cadence felt like breathing. Hands went up, young faces, old faces, people still smelling faintly of motor oil, cheap lavender, printer toner. What if it's family? Someone asked. Family ties end where respect ends, I said. Use the system. Documents first, explanations later. I showed them the crowbar groove. A photo cropped tight so the light caught steel on wood. Proof leaves marks, I said. So does safety. Then I passed around laminated checklists, Sergeant Cole's squares tiny and satisfying. The room quieted into that good kind of silence, the kind that means pencils are writing, not throats holding back. When I finished, people stand in a slow wave from the back to the front. No whoops, just bodies aligning to a lesson. The applause that found us after held correct weight and stopped when it should. I tucked the deed back in the sleeve and felt paper steady my pulse. Afterward, a kid in a varsity hoodie handed me a photo of his mother's lease, corners dog-eared, and whispered, "We're getting pushed." I circled 3 lines, wrote 2 steps, and gave him my number. Start a folder, I said. Put your name on the tab. At home, the evening smelled like lemon oil and the faint mineral of new screws in old wood. The permanent order sat eyed level in control, front pocket. A quiet anchor. My apartment key chimed in the dish when I set down the day. The veteran pin lay beside it, cool metal against worn ceramic. A knock came at twilight. 3 soft taps made for nostalgia. Through the peephole, Evelyn's cardigan, Daniel's set jaw, Robert's eyes skittering like minnows. I didn't open the door. Orders are in place, I said, voice even through wood and latch. Counsel only. Silence, then footsteps that sounded like habit failing. The elevator sighed and took them away. I made tea. The kettle hissed, then settled. On the counter, I wrote thank you notes, Grant, Cole, the clerk who liked straight lines. I taped a new index card inside the cabinet. Next, teach 2 classes, write template packet, sleep. Small tasks, solid walls. Night air moved through the blinds and laid stripes on the deed. I set the folder on the table, slid the apartment key across its plastic, and palmed the veteran pin. The crowbar notch under my fingers had turned from wound to reference, a shallow groove my thumb could find in the dark without meaning danger. A message pinged. A panel invite for next month. A DM from the kid with the lease. Started my folder. Thank you. I replied with the only word that never lied to me, copy. Before bed, I walked the perimeter. Deadbolt, chain, hidden latch. The door answered each check with the soft click of things behaving. The apartment held the days quiet the way a good file holds truth. Snug, unshowy, ready. I slept and woke to my own morning. Steam in the riser, coffee finding its honest smell, sun combing dust into neat bars on the floor. I pressed my palm to the deed and felt the page cool my skin. Then I opened the window an inch and let the city in on my terms. They'd tried to take everything they couldn't name. I named it all, filed it, and stood it up straight. The folder got heavier with proof and lighter in my hands. The key bit the lock exactly where it should. My life made a quiet sound when it closed right. Peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you build, protect, and finally live inside, without apology. If you believe boundaries and documents are the strongest revenge, subscribe for real stories about freedom, dignity, and surviving family betrayal.